Hi there! Alam mo ba kung ano ang UPCAT? Malamang oo kasi pinindot mo tong video na to eh. Ang tanong, handa ka na ba para dito? O kaya sa tingin mo ba, papasa ka kaya rito? Pagkatapos ng video na ito, sisikapin natin na ang maging sagot mo sa mga tanong na ito ay oo, oo at oo. So, first things first, what is UPCAT? UPCAT stands for the University of the Philippines College Admission Test. It is a 5-hour-long examination consisting of the following subtests: language proficiency, reading comprehension, mathematics, and science. More specifically, the test would look something like this. Language proficiency would be 70 items with a 40-minute time allotment. Science proficiency consists of 60 items with a 50-minute time allotment. Math proficiency would also have 60 items but with a longer time allotment of 75 minutes. And lastly, reading comprehension would also be 60 items with a shorter time allotment of 50 minutes. Now, you might be wondering, is the UPCAT hard? Is it difficult? Well, let us look at its passing rate in 2019. So in 2019, there were about 150,000 applicants, 100,000 eligibles, 90,000 takers, and only about 12,000 passers. If we compute the percentage of passers to takers, this would only be around 13%, which tells us that the exam might really be a challenge. So if that is the case, why do many people still attempt to take the UPCAT? Is the University of the Philippines good? Well, let's look at the rankings. In Asia, UP is ranked 78 overall compared to all the colleges and universities on the continent. In fact, this is really good since there are about 6,065 official higher education institutions in Asia. This means that UP is actually one of the best schools that you can find here in Asia. In fact, if we compare this to the universities here in the country, UP is actually the best statistically in the Philippines. In second place, we have the Ateneo de Manila University, which ranks 137 in Asia. In third place, we have De La Salle University, which is ranked at 154. And lastly, we have the University of Santo Tomas in the 179th place overall. So if you are taking high school here in the Philippines, UP is truly a great choice to consider. But how do you actually apply for it? To apply for the UPCAT, simply check out this link. I won't really go over the details since by now, the application process is unfortunately already closed. But basically, it would redirect you to this screen and all you have to do is click the UPCAT online application and then just explore the requirements, documents, forms, and payments that you need to take note of. If you are successful in applying for the UPCAT this upcoming year, the exam dates are August 10 and 11, 2025. If you are viewing this around the time of upload, chances are you still have about a year to prepare for it. That is my main goal in this video, to help you in your preparation stage and make sure that you put up a great fight in this college entrance exam. Hi there, glad to meet you. Welcome to the world of UPCAT. My name is Pai. People affectionately refer to me as the Pai Man. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a graduating BS Mathematics student at UP Diliman. I was blessed to be part of the 13% UPCAT passers in 2019. During my time, I was also fortunate to pass other college entrance tests such as ASET, DCAT, and USTET. It is your turn. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How were your grades in grades 8 to 11? Was it great or not so much? As you see, to qualify for UP, we have the University Predicted Grade or UPG, which is a combination of 40% of your high school grades, specifically from grades 8 to 11, and 60% of your UPCAT score. Basically, this tells us that UPCAT actually tests more of your character or how you have been throughout your time in school. This includes your study habits, your hard work and discipline, and your learning strategies. Among these three, I think that the most important is hard work and discipline, since everything can be developed if you have these two inside you. As a matter of fact, if you feel like your study habits or learning strategies are still lacking, I suggest that you do these three things: read books, listen to podcasts, and, of course, subscribe to my channel. Go! What are you waiting for? Click that subscribe button now. Your very own UPCAT journey is about to unfold. A world of dreams and adventures with UP awaits. Let's go! First and foremost, fix your health. Without this, I don't think that you'll be able to reach your full potential throughout your preparation process. So sleep sufficiently, ideally for around 7 to 9 hours a day. Eat completely, make sure that you eat on time and that you have a well-balanced diet, and exercise daily, or at least do some physical activity like walking every single day. Next, how should you study for UPCAT? Before we can even begin the studying process, we first need to learn where we can gather learning materials and resources. When it comes to learning materials for entrance exams, there are actually a lot of ways to obtain them. In particular, I would focus on two major areas for you to gather your resources from. First are college entrance test review centers. Whichever review center you pick, they are consistent with these three things. They give out review materials, they facilitate discussions and exams, and they give out hacks and tricks for answering exams efficiently. Famous review centers here in the Philippines includes Mentors Plus, Review Masters, and Braintree. Personally, I have a slight bias towards Mentors Plus since this is where I came from in 2019, but feel free to choose any of these. The only downfall with review centers is that they can be quite costly, and the learning is kind of generic and not usually tailored to you. In fact, Filipino, an educational website here in the Philippines, said that with great time management, an UPCAT reviewer can actually be better compared to review centers. Through reviewers, you can allot more time to develop your weaknesses even at your own pace. Also, it is nice to develop discipline and self-reliance early on, as this will be important as you go through your college life. Believe me, having strong discipline really goes a long way. Aside from review centers, you can also opt for reviewers, both physical and online. As mentioned earlier, with this, you can focus more on your weaknesses and learn at your own pace. And it is more practical since it is less costly. The only downside is that it requires effort and discipline. Personally, I don't think that this is really a downside. I think that this is more of a challenge, which would be great for your growth. Some of the physical reviewers that I could recommend are the Maroon Blue Book, MSA's All College Admission Tests Reviewer, and the official SAT Study Guide, since most people say that if you can pass the SAT, then you will most probably also pass the UPCAT. For online reviewers, you may check Filipinos and Review Masters UPCAT reviewers, which I would link below, and also YouTube channels that provide free educational content like the PyMath. Now that we have gathered these resources, the next step is to determine how to use the learning resources in such a way that learning is optimized. To use these properly, the first step is to take diagnostic or sample exams. Diagnostic exams help you determine your strengths and weaknesses. In turn, this would help you structure what you should be studying more and studying less of. Afterwards, the next thing to do is to practice, practice, and practice. According to a study published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology by Andrew Butler, repeated testing produced superior retention and transfer on the final test relative to repeated studying. In fact, these benefits are not only limited to retention, they also extend to the transfer of knowledge in a variety of contexts. In using practice exams, make sure to do this with constraints like putting a timer on while you are answering an exam or recreating the exam environment in terms of place, materials, outfit, etc. By doing this, you prepare yourself for the conditions and pressure that you might feel during the exam. Now, for a more in-depth guide on how to use the learning materials, we'll go over some tips on how to deal with each subtest. Again, these are mathematics, science, language proficiency, and reading comprehension. We start with my favorite one, which is mathematics. The coverage in math includes arithmetic and number sense, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, statistics, calculus, and logic. According to the data, algebra is actually the most frequent math topic that appears in the test. So take note of that one. And for my advice, first, focus on the fundamental concepts, because if you forget any formulas or tricks, you can almost always rely on the fundamental stuff to obtain an answer. Next, use active recall by testing or quizzing yourself. I actually have a full video about this titled Study Less, Study Math Smart, wherein you can learn what active recall is and the strategies on how to implement this in your learning of math. Afterwards, I also suggest that you learn the Filipino translation of some math terms. If you're unaware, the UPCAT is actually a mixture of Filipino and English items to test your proficiency in those two languages. With that, try to familiarize yourself with some of the measuring units in Filipino, such as length or distance, mass or weight, time, and volume. Lastly, use YouTube to understand concepts much better. If you check out my channel, I actually have a bunch of stuff going on there, such as study hacks, how to solve videos, math tricks, lessons, etc. After mathematics, let us now move on to science. For science, the topics covered are chemistry, biology, earth science, and physics. Similar to math, I suggest that you focus on the fundamental concepts, use active recall, especially flashcards, and know the translation of some terms. Since science is a concept-heavy subject, I advise you to practice explaining the science concepts in your own words. Formally, we call this process the Feynman technique, named after Richard Feynman, an American physicist. The process would look something like this. First, pick and study a topic. Second, try to explain the topic to someone, like a child who is unfamiliar with it. It is important to highlight here that your explanation must match a child's level of understanding. So make sure to use simple language when doing this process. Third, identify any gaps in your understanding or the difficulties you experienced while explaining the topic. Fourth, return to your learning materials to understand the topic better. Repeat the second step and so on. And voila! You now have a solid trick to master a certain science topic. After science, we now move on to language proficiency. For its coverage, we have vocabulary as well as grammar and composition. I would like to take note that in this part, the data shows that there is an equal distribution of the items in English and Filipino. This tells us that you have to really practice with both languages when studying for this subtest. For my tips, this is quite a lot. First, learn to love reading professionally written stuff like journals, books, or magazines. On that note, try to avoid blogs, as this may actually worsen your language skills. If you're wondering where you can get this stuff, you may check search engines or databases such as Google Scholar, Science Direct, and JSTOR, then simply type in there what you want to learn more about. Second, also study suffixes, prefixes, root words, etc. For instance, if you are unsure of a word but you see the prefix for, then that immediately gives you an idea that the word probably refers to before or in front of something. Third, avoid shortcuts in messaging and emailing. Just be mindful to type the complete word or sentence every time. Fourth, try to learn at least one new word a day. A useful tool here is the PDF found online titled The 1000 Most Common SAT Words by SparkNotes. According to previous UPCAT takers, this PDF features a lot of uncommon English words that appeared when they took the UPCAT. If you want, you can even incorporate these words into your usual conversations in your everyday life. Fifth on our list is to play games like Scrabble or Word Factory. I think that is pretty self-explanatory. Lastly, put something online like blogs, articles, or even YouTube videos. If I compare my language skills when I started doing YouTube to now, I think that my language skills have already grown quite tremendously from before. Last but certainly not the least is reading comprehension. For the coverage, of course, reading duh. Also, similar to language proficiency, the data shows that there is an equal distribution of the items in English and Filipino. For my tips, develop the habit of reading various materials, both in English and Filipino. Next, practice speed reading through skimming and scanning. To illustrate these, let us use Filipino's UPCAT Reading Comprehension Practice Questions Set 1. For skimming, you simply go over the reading section from top to bottom to get a gist of the content. Some strategies used here are just reading the first sentence of each paragraph as well as the last sentence in each. So that is skimming. For scanning, we begin by looking first at the questions before the story, so that when we read the story, we simply search for certain facts that are needed to answer the questions. So now we know where to gather and how to use our learning resources. One more important thing that need to be talked about is how should you structure your learning plan? Here we have two levels to consider, time blocking and the GROW method. We go over these one by one. First is time blocking, which basically means setting a portion of your day for review. For example, you decided to study every day at 8 p.m. for 30 minutes. So you studied mathematics on Monday, science on Tuesday, reading comprehension on Wednesday, language proficiency on Thursday, and so on. It is all about consistency. Moreover, the study time should also be progressive, like start with 30 minutes, then 60 minutes, and then 90 minutes, with 90 minutes being the maximum, since according to Dr. Andrew Huberman's Neuroplasticity Super Protocol, research shows that 90 minutes is about the longest period we can expect to maintain intense focus and effort toward learning. If you accomplished level 1, next is level 2, the GROW method, made by Ali Abdal and Kaijun Koya Academy. Before we go over what GROW stands for, we first take note that we actually also call this method the retrospective revision timetable. With this in mind, let us differentiate prospective from retrospective to better understand how this works. For prospective, you plan ahead of time, like you study algebra on Monday, geometry on Tuesday, trigonometry on Wednesday, and so on. Over time, what you will see is that you won't really have a well-rounded development in all topics. In our example, statistics and logic are left out since these are the topics that you are weak at to begin with. The problem here is that this method fails to account for the fact that you learn at various rates on every topic. Sometimes you learn fast, while in others, you just need more time to digest the material even more. With that in mind, This is where the retrospective comes in. In this method, you begin by identifying your weakest point, which in this case is logic. After doing so, you switch this up and focus first instead on studying logic. After some time, assess again which topic is now the weakest. In this case, it is statistics. So let us switch that up again and focus on reviewing statistics this time. Over time, what you'll have is a more well-rounded development in each of the subjects. That is why taking the diagnostic test is important. It makes you aware of your strengths and weaknesses. This is the GROW method, where GROW stands for grid, since we need a table layout here, rate to account for your confidence in a certain topic, overall outcome to have a balanced development, and weakest topic, since we focus on weaknesses here. Formally speaking, to apply this to your study, you may use Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. As an example, say you decided to study geometry, statistics, and logic on your first day. What you do next is rate these based on your confidence in the topic. Green for high confidence, yellow for medium confidence, and red for low confidence. Afterwards, repeat the process for topics that you haven't studied and rate again. Now that you have studied all the topics, check which ones are shaded red. These would now be the topics that you'll study next. And so plot, then shade. Now here, notice that there aren't any shades of red anymore. This means that we now look at the topics in yellow. These will now be the topics that we focus on. Repeat this process until every box is shaded green. When all the boxes are now shaded green, your weakest topics this time are now the ones that you haven't reviewed for a long time. In this case, that would be algebra and geometry. So just continue this process until your exam day. Now, probably a month before your exam, part of the preparation stage includes scouting the venue. This is important since you will be shocked to learn that UP is actually very huge. You might get lost trying to find your venue and classroom. Also, it would be nice to check if the room that you'll have your test in is air-conditioned or not. This would help you decide what you'll wear on your testing day. Furthermore, it is important to know how long it will take you to get from your house to UP. And if you commute, this would also help you decide which mode of transportation would be ideal. It is important to remember that on a big day, it usually starts the night before. By that, I mean you need to rest, relax, and sleep for probably 8 to 10 hours to ensure that you will perform at your best during the exam. For your outfit, make sure to wear something comfortable as the exam is quite long. Just in case the room is cold, make sure to bring a jacket. Also, wear a watch so that you can keep track of the time as you take the exam. Make sure to bring your ID as this is important for your identification. If this is not available, make sure to have a valid government ID instead. Next, don't forget your test permit. Without this, you won't be able to take the UPCAT. Then, bring your other documents. These are marked on your test permit. Just check it out. After that, bring 2 quality pencils. You can even bring more if you want, just to be sure. Of course, if you have a pencil, also bring a sharpener and eraser. These are complementary pieces to the pencils. Lastly, don't forget to bring snacks and water. I remember that in my review center, one of the lecturers highly suggested nuts or peanuts, as these are complex carbohydrates that could help you sustain your energy longer. Some of the things that you don't need to bring are calculators, since this is not allowed, and scratch papers, since this would already be provided to you by the proctor.
Don't eat and drink too much before your exam. Eating a heavy meal would fog your brain and make you feel sluggish. Drinking plenty might lead to frequent urination during the exam. So, just eat the right amount before the exam, okay?
During the day of your exam, be early and don't be late. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so make sure to arrive at your testing site at least 1 hour before the exam. Once you arrive, stay positive, calm, and focused. Always remember the law of attraction. Believe, stay confident, and you will succeed. Now, just before you enter your testing site, here's a pro tip from Dr. Andrew Huberman's Focus Toolkit. He recommends using 40Hz binaural beats for about 5 minutes before a test to help you improve your focus and concentration during the exam. When that is all said and done, it is time for action. Here are some of my answering tips for you. 1. Skim the test first. Doing this would help prime your brain for what to expect from the exam. Moreover, you might notice some questions that are related to one another and obtain clues from them. 2. Manage time wisely and choose easy items first. Whether an item is easy or difficult, they still both have the same point. As a rule of thumb, avoid spending 2 minutes or more on a single item. 3. Use multiple choice tricks if you feel like you don't really know the answer to an item. With that, you may watch Thomas Frank's YouTube video titled 5 Rules and 1 Secret Weapon for Acing Multiple Choice Tests. However, I don't think that this is really important if you already did well in your preparation stage before the exam. What I want to point out though is that try to answer everything. In UPCAT, every point matters, even if it is right minus 1/4 or 0.25 wrong. To illustrate why I believe you should answer everything, let us consider 3 different scenarios and do a little bit of math. First, if you have 4 blanks, then that implies 4 less points. Second, if you answered 4 items incorrectly, then that would constitute to 4 less points and 0.25 times 4 less points from the minus wrong component, which would yield 5 less points to you all in all. Third, say that in the 4 items you answered, you did 1 correctly. Then, this is 3 less points, 0.25 times 3 less points from the minus wrong component, and plus 1 point for the correct item, which yields to 2.75 less points overall. If we compare the first 2 cases, incorrectly answering all 4 items would yield to a net negative 1 point. On the other hand, if you get at least 1 correct item from answering the 4 items, then this would merit you a net positive 1.25 points. This shows that every item matters since in UPCAT, every point matters. And besides, if you are unsure, you can always make an educated guess to increase your chance of getting the correct answer. Once you are done taking the UPCAT, make sure to treat yourself. Like, do something fun, relax, and be proud of yourself. If you ever fail, this is not the end of the world. You could still apply to other big universities, ask for reconsideration at UP, or transfer eventually. Whatever you plan to do, take up everything that you have learned through the process. Keep on going. This is only the beginning.